Thank you so much, everybody. So with that, and without further ado, Ricard, it's your floor.
Thank you. So, okay, I think that's what. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your welcome, and I'll share with you the emotional side of this of this meeting, which is this kind of meeting between Catalonia and the states, university and policy. I think we spoke about that with Ernesto yesterday, that this is also a responsibility as researchers to promote this kind of interaction between different areas of knowledge production, I would say. I am very pleased that this event is finally taking place. I appreciate the commitment of the delegation of Catalonia for making it possible, together with Ernesto Castañeda. Following time instructions, it's really challenging to summarize the paradigm of intercultural policies in 15 minutes. The purpose I have is mainly to frame the debate that we seek to promote, which is to discuss the paradigm of intercultural policies from a conceptual and policy point of view at the city and regional level, asking ourselves how interculturalism can be a common ground for dialogue between Europe and American cities, Catalonia and also American cities. During my visit at the CUNY Graduate Center, I learned that this could be already challenging issue. A few weeks ago, we hosted a talk of my last co-edited book on contested concept in migration studies, and an American scholar, Professor John Molenkoff, directly argued that some of the selected concepts that we take in the book were too European, given as an example the concept of interculturalism. He literally argued that it was not a concept of the US conceptual migration agenda. So my starting premise is to what extent interculturalism, which is penetrating European society as a policy paradigm to govern and to manage diversity, could be also American. And if no, why not? For this short talk, I have selected key information. There is many other issues that I am forced to leave aside, but which could be taken for the debate. I hope at the end to be able to give some answer to questions like what are the main distinguishing characteristics of intercultural policy paradigm, why now in Europe, are there different currents in intercultural debate, and to what extent the territorial scale, which will be one of my main guiding traits of this talk, affect the meaning and its use. And finally, how can interculturalism guide also the governance of diversity in American cities? I always like to begin by describing what I call the great paradox of our time. Our societies already accept globalization as an irreversible trend in our societies, marking our historical stage of interconnected people, countries, markets, but we have still a lot of difficulties accepting one of its byproducts, the fact that people move and our societies are becoming diverse in race, religion, culture, and ethnicity. Current debates around arguments such as too much diversity can threaten cohesion and stability, and even the American majority-minority debate that diagnoses as a problem that whites are becoming minorities in America, and even the social political movement such as the white supremacists on the debate on the great replacement are also proof that our societies still have many difficulties of normalizing differences and diversity. And we are still placed diversity within the folder of the others, since there are always a cynic, I will say, trend that assumes that whoever defines diversity never found himself within this category. Diversity is always the others, not us. This is maybe legitimate to ask if national citizens are also diverse. These issues are important to me today, because I feel that our political paradigm have also failed to stop this movement against diversity. I propose to place this debate within the historical continuum and see how the old paradigm, multiculturalism, is today bankrupt. Nobody wants to be identified today with the M word. The multicultural paradigm has basically been a state approach, concentrating its efforts in granting specific rights to those that are seen as disadvantaged in society due to the difference in terms of culture, ethnic, and racial identity. This compensation identity policy is governed by normative principles of equality and justice. The policy of difference, affirmative action in America, and compensation rights has been basic strategy. But today, there is a backlash to this model. Today, we are what I call the post-multicultural era. This is the name of my last book, Insight. This is the result of an academic diagnosis and public debate that multiculturalism has not delivered what it promised. Racism, discrimination, territorial segregation continue to challenge our diverse societies. Power relations based on ethnic origin continue to interfere. And there are already big challenges related to those who criminalize diversity and build arguments around the nexus that diversity threatens our cohesion and stability. There are even extreme statements that maintain that there is no possibility of society that is not homogeneous in cultural and national terms. In this environment, I will argue that intercultural paradigm give us a break and probably a bit space of optimism. Interculturalism as a policy paradigm attempts to address some of the challenges. In the first place, I will say more urgent the need to begin to build strategies so that diversity is accepted by all as a normal part of a society. This recognition basically means that diversity ceases to be an explanatory variable of inequalities and exclusion of power and power relations. The starting point has been a direct criticism to multiculturalism, since it is argued that multiculturalism has left aside one important aspect, the socializing aspect that requires living together in diversity. This means that the starting point is to ensure that people who live in society interact, since interaction is a key strategy for integration and the construction of citizenship. For interculturalism, the basic problem with multiculturalism is that it has focused too much on justifying differentiated rights and has underestimated as essential aspect contact between people of different origin, including national citizens. Following prominent contact theories, its basis is only through contact that we can reduce prejudice and racism, and it is through contact that we can promote mutual understanding and mutual acceptance. From the beginning, the focus of promoting interpersonal contact rather than separation, on focusing on what people share together rather than what separates them, as seen as a powerful policy approach that reduces the deficit of multicultural paradigm. Focus on cultural differences and focus on providing protection rights to differences. From the beginning, interculturalism in Europe has been seen as a community building and a cohesion making policy for better respond to today's complex challenges of diversity. Contact is taken in a broad sense, and public space becomes the main space where contact takes place. Hence, the importance on how to configure public space in our diverse societies. Of course, not all contact produce benefits, and the debate about the conditions for positive contact can take place. Here we know from some contact theories that equality is an important condition. This means that in condition of inequality on power relation, contact can be a factor of racism and discrimination. In relation to territorial scales, the concept of interculturalism comes first from international relations and from the global sphere. Interculturalism has been used as a conflict resolution strategy to promote dialogue between regions and civilization, as a negotiation strategy to avoid war. Intercultural dialogue from international organizations principles of UNESCO, UN, and paradigm of alliance of civilizations. On another scale, interculturalism has been used in South American countries and even in Australia to frame social and political debate on the relationship between indigenous Aboriginal people within the framework debate of tradition and modernity. In Lebanon, in many and many others multi-religious countries, interculturalism has been used as a forum for inter-religious debate. Quebec is also well known for spreading the concept. It was like a reaction against the Canadian multicultural project that incorporated Quebec question within the same folder as the dimension of diversity, such as indigenous people, migrants, and Quebecois together. Quebec found unacceptable and proposed its own approach to diversity, the intercultural paradigm based on the framework debate between diversity and the French tradition. Interculturalism is said to be the best way to ensure balance between diversity and the so-called survival of Quebecois society in the context of English prominence. In Europe, the intercultural paradigm has been introduced only recently, a decade ago, 10 years, not more, when the European Union declared in 2008 as the year of intercultural dialogue. But if we analyze documents and practices, we are immediately surprised by the different meanings of interculturalism. There are basically three meanings in the documents of European Union. The regional dimension that says that EU is a region, as a region seeks to promote intercultural dialogue with other regions in the world. The second is internal to European citizens, the idea to provoke intercultural encounters among European citizens through freedom of movement. The freedom of movement is based on intercultural also in Europe, because freedom of movement is the strategy of European Union to produce European identity. For example, and the third is also interculturalism to frame interstate, European state relation. The use of interculturalism for the management of diversity related to migration has been possible also in 2008 with the program of intercultural cities in the Council of Europe. The idea was to promote interculturalism as a city project that addresses issues related to governance of diversity. Today, more than 150 cities are networked by the Council of Europe. And there are even national intercultural networks. We are now part, in Catalonia, promoting another scale, the regional scale, through the EU Belong project, which is unique also in Europe, as we will know today. What can we learn from these different uses? That scale of application shapes the perspective and could determine different debates. If we review the biography on the use of interculturalism, we can be surprised by its multifaceted use, and not always related to migration. So the debate of the use of interculturalism as a city strategy for managing diversity is rather a new debate. On the city scale, interculturalism becomes pragmatic, close to the needs and challenge of people. And we enter in the field of micro-policy, proximity policy, face-to-face relations. The management of public space become key area. Following the meaning of Habermas's critical theory, public space are, above all, space of communication and exchange. Today, severely problematized by consumer society and security. From urban planning, we also know that public space are public parks, squares, memorials, streets, playgrounds, community open markets, square, waterfronts, but they can also be neighborhood space, such as residential streets, community gardens, libraries, festivals. Contact can be practiced also in formal and informal settings. For many purposes and expectation, contact can be spontaneous, planned, mediated. It can be last seconds, minutes, hours, days. and even weeks. And we can contact can be repetitive and over time. Contact may be verbal and also non-verbal, which is very important to make use of body language. In racism, this is very important. All this variation of contact, time, space, intensity, degrees have different results, and normative paradigm, intercultural citizenship can accommodate it, this multifaceted variation of type of contact. Castles, a seminal work, shared with us some questions about personal identity, very related to interculturalism. He say that today, the way people relate to each other, it's better say that the traditional who I am based on where I was born and who are my parents. Additionally, intercultural citizenship highlights the sense of place as a vital element of citizenship formation. This can include where people now live and feel belonging through everyday practice in the neighborhood, at the city. In its roots, interculturalism means cultural exchange. So, by definition, it is a relational concept. It emphasizes the fact that two agents exchange their culture through the promotion of contact and exchange knowledge. Behind the policy narrative, there is a sense of equality, shared power, participation, human rights. Through contact, new citizen public identity emerges, recognizing the value of diversity as a new public culture, on what I call myself culture of diversity, which includes diversity awareness, diversity recognition, diversity participation, which is very important, and diversity representation. Within the premise, it is argued that the coexistence in diversity cannot be anything other than the product of citizen learning and result of socialization, an action that public powers must lead and therefore must be responsible for providing to the entire population. This socializing aspect, even engineering model of identity formation, is at the core of intercultural citizenship. Through this approach, belonging and membership are formed through spatial interpersonal relations rather than place of birth, national origin, any ascription trait of identity. We all know the negative side of diversity related to migration when there is not political intervention. Social unrest, racism, xenophobia, discrimination, inequality, unbalanced power relation, and so on. But perhaps less about the positive side of diversity in terms of social benefits. We must begin to socialize this word diversity as a public good. In this sense, intercultural citizenship does not only have a reactive dimension, since it can be seen as a conflict-based approach and then understood as a mechanism to reduce conflict factors related to diversity, but most importantly, a proactive dimension in terms of fostering new form of citizenship, identity, and belonging, separated from birth and origin, new in terms of cohesion, social innovation, creative society, and solidarity. Here, the debate on diversity advantage takes place. Diversity seen as an asset for development, resource, opportunity. As a New German scale, and I end with that, interculturalism becomes a global city project, an event city branch. In fact, the change of that urban policy and migration studies have heralded in this first decade of the 21st century, where it is not widely recognized that cities are playing an active role in the governance of diversity and are taking steps to build their own policy narratives rather than mere units in a hierarchical, I will say, relation with the state, closely related to the trend of intercultural urban citizenship. As a citizen training policy, one of the central differences in relation to multiculturalism is that it addresses the entire population and not claim different treatment for those that are different on the basis of identity. This transversal dimension is probably one of these forces that make interculturalist policy inoffensive, I will say, and I will say also ideologically neutral. There is still a long way in research, both conceptual and empirical, to better configure intercultural urban citizenship. Since this implies promoting critical voice from the city themselves, demanding more autonomy, more power to better draw their own citizen narratives and belonging, separated from the traditional static and state visions of citizenship based on birth, for instance. There were probably operative categories during the last century, but clearly today, with transnational, complex, multiple, varied identities that intersect of society, it makes obsolete to steal the credo of neo-nationalism of an imagined homogeneous population. It is probably against this, what I call myself, the new romanticism that intercultural policy can provide tools that we should, and I will say very urgent today to try to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much.